The moment my grandpa stepped out of the front door and saw me getting out of an Uber, the look on his face was something I'll never forget. His eyebrows shot up so high I thought they were about to merge with his hairline, and he stared at me like I had pulled up in a clown car instead of a perfectly normal ride share. And then, in that half-shocked, half-confused tone only grandparents can pull off without sounding rude, he said, "Why did you take an Uber? Where's your SUV we gave you?" And I swear, the way he asked it, I felt this tightness in my chest because I knew this moment was going to blow everything wide open. I knew I couldn't hide it anymore. I knew I couldn't keep pretending things were fine. So I just looked at him, swallowed hard, and said the one sentence that flipped everything upside down for my entire family. "Grandpa, I didn't drive it because I don't have it anymore." And the second those words left my mouth, I saw his expression shift from confusion to concern, then to something much darker. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head, and he took a step closer like he thought maybe he had misheard me, or maybe I was joking. But I wasn't. And honestly, I wish I could say this was the only moment things went wrong, but it was only the beginning. Before I even tell you what happened next, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been caught in a situation where telling the truth would make you look guilty, even though you were the one who had been wronged the entire time? Because that's exactly where I found myself, and I still don't know if I made the right choice. So tell me, was I wrong for what I did next? To understand how everything spiraled into this disaster, you need to know how things started. I'm 21, and for as long as I can remember, my grandparents have been the emotional backbone of our family. They're those old school hardworking type of people who believe in earning everything, but also helping family when they genuinely need it. When I graduated high school, they surprised me with something I still think about to this day: a fully paid for brand new SUV. Not a used car, not a family hand-me-down, a real, straight from the dealership SUV that they bought just for me. I remember standing in the driveway with my mouth open, keys dangling in front of me like something out of a commercial. I couldn't stop thanking them. I couldn't stop hugging them. It felt like freedom. It felt like trust. It felt like they believed in me in a way nobody else had. My grandparents always saw potential in me. And getting that SUV wasn't just about the car. It was about them showing me that they believed I could build a future for myself if I had the right tools. And I did everything right in the beginning. I took care of it. I didn't speed. I didn't take it on random adventures. I washed it every Sunday. I kept the interior spotless. I would even send them photos whenever I got the oil changed, because I wanted them to know I appreciated their gift. If you've ever had someone trust you that deeply, you know how careful you become with that trust. For me, that SUV symbolized everything I wanted to become, but that was before everything got tangled up with my mother and sister and all the toxic nonsense they always carried with them. Now, my relationship with my mom has always been shaky. She's the kind of person who thinks she's owed everything just because she exists. She doesn't admit mistakes. She doesn't apologize. She doesn't take responsibility, and she definitely doesn't like it when someone else in the family gets more attention than she does. If you're the child of a narcissistic parent, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And my sister, she's basically a smaller version of my mom. Same attitude, same entitlement. Same, the world revolves around me, mindset. They're like a duo that feeds off each other's negativity, and growing up with that was exhausting. But I tried to stay out of their drama as much as possible. I spent most of my time at my grandparents' house instead, because being around them felt peaceful compared to the constant tension at home. Everything changed about 6 months ago. My mom started acting strange around me, more needy, more prying, more fake sweet. She kept asking when I would be home, how long I'd stay away, little questions that didn't seem important at first. But then she began hinting about the SUV. She'd say things like, "You know, it's not fair that you get a new car while the rest of us are struggling," or, "You don't appreciate what you have," or, "If your grandparents really cared, they would have helped me too." At the time, I didn't think she was capable of doing something extreme. I thought it was just jealousy, maybe insecurity, maybe wanting something she couldn't have. But what I didn't know was that she was already planning what she would eventually do. One day, I came home from work and noticed the driveway was empty. At first I thought maybe I had parked somewhere else and forgotten, but no, my car was gone. Completely gone. I checked the street, checked the neighbors, walked around like a confused idiot thinking maybe it had been towed for some random reason. But there was no tow notice, no stickers, No warnings, nothing. That's when I went inside and found my mom sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone calmly, like everything was normal. I asked her if she'd seen the car, and she didn't even look up from her screen. She just said, "Oh yeah, I used it earlier. I had somewhere to go." And that sentence alone made my stomach twist. She had never asked to borrow it before. She had never needed it before. She had her own car. Even if it was older and not as nice as mine, it still worked. So why would she take mine? I tried to stay calm, but something felt very, very wrong. I asked her where she left it, and she shrugged like she didn't remember. Then she muttered something about leaving it, somewhere near the mall, before getting up and going into her room like she didn't just drop a bomb on me. I spent the next 2 hours walking around the mall parking lot like a lunatic, clicking the remote key over and over hoping to hear my SUV beep somewhere. But nothing, no sound, no flash of had vanished. I called my mom again and again, and she ignored every call. When she finally picked up, she sounded irritated and said, "Stop calling me. I'm busy." I demanded she tell me where she left the car. She sighed dramatically and said she didn't remember because she had a lot on her mind. And that's when everything inside me snapped. I called my sister to see if she knew anything, and she laughed. Actually laughed. She said something like, "Well, maybe you shouldn't brag so much about having a nice car." I wasn't bragging. I was just living my life. I didn't deserve this. Nobody does. When I finally got home again, ready to scream, ready to demand answers, ready to do anything to get my SUV back, I found out the truth in the worst possible way. My mom didn't lose my car. She didn't forget where she parked it. She had sold it. She sold my SUV, the one my grandparents gave me, the one registered under my name, to her cousin for a fraction of its value because she needed the money more than I did. She didn't even apologize. She stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed like I was being dramatic and said, "This family needed help. Your car was just sitting there. You're young. You'll figure it out." And I swear, in that moment, something inside me broke. I had never felt rage like that before. I wasn't just angry. I was betrayed. She had crossed a line I didn't think she would ever cross. And it wasn't just about the car. It was about everything she had taken from me emotionally over the years. My confidence, my peace, my sense of stability. This was just the physical symbol of all of it. I told my grandparents about it as soon as I could, but I downplayed the severity because I didn't want them to worry or get involved in something that would stress them out. I told them the car got damaged and I was dealing with insurance. It was a lie, but I felt like I was protecting them. I know it sounds stupid now, but at the time, I didn't want them to feel guilty or responsible. They had given me a gift out of love. I didn't want that gift to become a burden on them. So for months, I pretended things were fine. I took Ubers everywhere. I worked extra hours. I even looked at cheap used cars online, but nothing was affordable. And my mom, she kept pretending everything was normal, as if she didn't ruin my life for her own financial convenience. My sister kept smirking at me like I deserved it somehow. And every day that passed, my anger grew thicker and heavier, sitting in my chest like a stone. So when my grandpa asked me why I took an Uber, that was the moment everything was forced out into the open. I couldn't lie anymore. I couldn't pretend. I couldn't keep covering for people who never covered for me. I could feel the tears burning behind my eyes, and I hated it because I didn't want to cry. I wanted to stay strong, but my voice cracked when I told him I didn't have the SUV anymore. He looked at me so slowly, so carefully, like he was trying to understand what I meant without immediately assuming the worst. But the worry in his eyes told me he already feared the truth. He asked me what happened to it, and I told him something had happened, but I didn't want to talk about it right at that moment. He didn't push, but he didn't drop it either. He said, "If something bad happened, you can tell us. We're here for you." And hearing that almost broke me. And now here's the thing. I know some people would have told their grandparents the truth right away. I know some people would have confronted their mom loudly enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. I know some people would have called the police the second they found out the car was sold. And maybe I should have. But when you've grown up being conditioned to keep family problems inside the house, to protect the image of the household no matter what, it becomes second nature to stay quiet even when you're drowning. My whole life had been one long, "Don't tell anyone" lesson, and now I was supposed to just break that conditioning overnight. It wasn't that easy. And before I continue this story, before I get into the disaster that came after, I want to pause and ask you the same question again. What would you have done in my place? If your own mother stole the most valuable gift you ever received, something given to you out of love, something meant to help you build your future, would you have gone straight to your grandparents and told them everything? Would you have confronted her head on? Would you have called the police? Or would you have hesitated the way I did, trapped between loyalty and pain, fear and anger? Tell me honestly, because before I tell you what happened next, I want you to comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have burned the entire façade to the ground when I finally asked you all what you would have done in my place? Standing there with my grandpa staring at me like he could sense every heavy secret I'd been carrying, I remember my hands actually shaking. It felt like years of holding everything inside had come crashing down at once, and I couldn't hide behind excuses or fake smiles anymore. My grandpa led me inside the house, and we sat down at the dining table across from each other. He rested his hands on the wooden surface and waited, calm, patient, silent. It was the kind of silence that feels safe, but also demands honesty. I took a deep breath, and before I could even stop myself, before I could swallow the truth again, I finally said it. Grandpa, Mom sold my SUV. The look on his face was something I'll never forget. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed, not in anger at me, but in this deep, painful disappointment at what he already suspected. He asked me slowly, word by word, how it happened, and I told him everything. How she'd acted strange for weeks. How she borrowed the SUV without permission. How she pretended she forgot where she parked it. How she sold it to her cousin for dirt cheap money, and then told me I was young enough to figure life out. How my sister laughed at me. How they both mocked me for being upset. How I didn't want to tell him or Grandma, because I didn't want them to feel guilty for giving me something that caused so much chaos. And he just stared at me across the table with this mixture of heartbreak and anger that literally made my stomach twist. When I finished speaking, he didn't yell. He didn't scold me. He didn't even ask follow-up questions at first. He just stood up quietly, went to the backyard, and called my grandma outside. I sat there alone in the silent house, hearing muffled voices through the sliding door, hearing the rising tension in their tones, hearing the disbelief. My heart was pounding. I didn't know whether they were disappointed in me for hiding the truth or furious at my mom for what she did. And I think in that moment, I realized how fragile everything in our family really was. Eventually, they both walked back in, and my grandma's eyes were watery, like she couldn't understand how her own daughter could do something like this. She hugged me tight, tighter than she had in years, and whispered that I should have told them sooner. And I broke down. I felt like a child again, confessing something I was terrified to say, only to find comfort instead of punishment. But while my grandparents comforted me, I could feel this storm building behind their calm. My grandma told my grandpa, call her. Now, what happened next felt like watching a volcano erupt in slow motion. My grandpa dialed my mom's number on speakerphone, and when she picked up, she sounded irritated, like talking to him was a chore. He greeted her politely but firmly, and then he asked, "Why did you sell the car we bought for him?" The silence that followed was the most intense silence I've ever heard in my life. I could practically hear her realizing that I told them the truth. She immediately switched to her manipulative voice, the one she uses whenever she wants to play the victim. She said she didn't know what I had told them, but she only sold it because she needed the money, and because I don't deserve such an expensive gift when I haven't done anything to earn it. She acted like she made a noble sacrifice, like she had helped the family, like she wasn't the villain. And then she had the audacity to say, "You shouldn't have bought him that car in the first place. You treat him better than you treat me, and it's not fair." My grandpa's voice dropped to this low, sharp tone I rarely hear. He said, "We gave him that car because he earned it. Because he works hard. Because he respects us. Because he doesn't manipulate people. And you had no right to touch what wasn't yours." She fired back immediately, yelling now, saying he always favored me, that I turned him against her, that my grandparents were stupid for trusting me with such an expensive vehicle. She kept going until my grandma stepped in and said, "You didn't steal from him. You stole from us too." And that shut her up for a few seconds. Then came the worst part. My mom tried to flip the script completely. She started crying loudly, fake crying, and said I exaggerated everything. She said she didn't sell it permanently. She just let someone borrow it for money, and she planned to buy it back once she got back on her feet. Lies. Absolute lies. She sold the SUV legally, full ownership transfer. She never planned to buy it back. She never planned to tell me. But she kept going with her delusional story until my grandpa cut her off and demanded the cousin's number. She refused. She said he didn't need to get involved. She said bringing outsiders into family business was disrespectful. My grandma shot back with, "You already brought outsiders in when you sold something that wasn't yours." My mom hung up. Just like that. She hung up on her parents, and I heard the kind of silence that feels like glass shattering. My grandpa didn't waste time. He immediately called his lawyer friend, someone he's known for 20 years, and explained the situation. I sat on the couch with my grandma in complete shock, because I never expected things to escalate so fast. The lawyer said something that chilled me. Because the car was in my name, what my mom did wasn't just wrong, it was illegal. As in, criminal level illegal, theft, fraud, unauthorized sale of personal property. He told my grandparents that the cousin who bought it was also in legal trouble if he knowingly participated in an illegal sale. My stomach dropped. I didn't want anyone to go to jail, not even my mom, despite everything she had done. The thought of my family breaking apart even more terrified me. But my grandpa said, "If she won't fix this, then I will." That's when he asked me to get dressed, because we were going to confront my mom in person. The drive to my parents' house felt unreal. My grandma was praying softly under her breath. My grandpa had his jaw clenched like he was holding back an earthquake. I felt like I was floating outside my body. When we arrived, my mom opened the door with this angry look like we had inconvenienced her. She started yelling before we even walked inside, but my grandpa pushed past her and said, "Where is the paperwork? Where is the bill of sale? Where is the cousin?" My sister came out of her room rolling her eyes, saying I was dramatic and that it was just a car. My grandma snapped at her, and my sister backed off for once. My mom refused to cooperate. She said she didn't owe anyone an explanation. She said the SUV was practically hers, because she was the mother, and that everything her children own is also hers. And that's when my grandpa lost it. He slammed his fist on the table so hard the salt shaker fell over, and he said, "Nothing you do belongs to you if you built it on lies." My sister tried to jump in, defending mom, but my grandma pointed at her and said, "Not one word." After a long, heated back and forth, my grandpa said if my mom didn't return the SUV or the money immediately, he would press charges and let the legal system decide. My mom scoffed and said, "Go ahead. You won't do it. You're all talk." That was her biggest mistake. My grandpa turned around, walked out the front door, pulled out his phone, and called the police right in front of her house. I had never seen my mom look scared before, but her face drained of color instantly. The officer on the phone said someone would come by to take a statement. My mom began begging. Now she was actually crying, real tears this time, saying she didn't know it was illegal, saying she was desperate, saying we shouldn't ruin her life over a misunderstanding. But the thing that enraged my grandparents the most was that she didn't apologize. Not once. She cried for herself, not for what she did to me. She cried for what she might lose, not for the trust she destroyed. My sister tried to protect her by saying she would call the cousin and get this SUV back, but it turned out the cousin had already sold it to someone else. That was the moment everything collapsed. There was no car to retrieve, no easy fix, no way to undo what she had done. She stole my future and sold it away like it meant nothing. When the police arrived, they asked questions, took notes, asked for proof of ownership, and I showed them the registration with my name on it. They treated the situation seriously, much more seriously than my mom expected. They told her she could either cooperate and attempt restitution or face charges. My mom kept crying but refused to say where the money was. My grandparents watched in silence, defeated but determined. The officers left after telling us the next steps, and we all stood in the living room, surrounded by this heavy, suffocating silence. My mom tried to guilt-trip me, asking how I could do this to her. My grandma stepped in and said, "No. How could you do this to him?" And for the first time in my life, my mom didn't have a comeback. She just stood there, broken but still unwilling to admit fault. We left the house, and my grandparents drove me back to theirs. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my mind. My mom's betrayal, my grandparents' disappointment, the police in our living room. I wondered if I should have stayed quiet, if I should have taken the loss, if I should have waited, if I had broken the family beyond repair. But then I remembered every cruel laugh, every belittling comment, every manipulation, every time my mom had made me feel small. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt angry. I felt justified. I felt like maybe, Just maybe, it was finally time to stop protecting people who never protected me. Over the next few weeks, things escalated even more. The police continued investigating. My grandparents pushed for restitution. My mom's cousin panicked and called repeatedly, offering excuses but no solutions. My sister blamed me publicly on social media, claiming I'd destroyed our family over a car. But strangers who saw her post actually sided with me, telling her what her mom did was theft. That shut her up fast. My mom tried everything: emotional blackmail, threats, silent treatment, fake apologies. But nothing worked because my grandparents refused to let her manipulate them anymore. Eventually, the only option left was legal restitution. She had to pay the full value of the SUV back. She fought it. She cried. She said she couldn't afford it. But the court didn't care. And my grandparents didn't care either. My grandpa covered the legal fees without hesitation, not because he wanted to punish her, but because he wanted to protect me. My mom ended up taking a loan she hated, a job she hated, and responsibilities she had avoided her entire life. And I stayed with my grandparents for months, working, saving, healing. The guilt slowly faded, replaced by clarity. The more time I spent away from my mom, the more I saw just how toxic she had been my entire life. Then one morning, months after everything had happened, my grandpa came into my room and said he wanted to show me something. He took me outside and led me to the driveway, and there it was, a new SUV. Not the same model as before, but brand new. Clean, beautiful, shiny. My heart dropped into my stomach. I told him he didn't have to do that. I told him after everything I didn't want him spending another penny on me. But he smiled gently and said, "We're not replacing the car. We're replacing the damage she did to you." And I swear, I burst into tears right there. I hugged him like my life depended on it. I hugged my grandma too, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like things might actually be okay. And now, sitting here telling this story, I want to ask you something one final time. After everything I went through, after everything my mom did, after the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal, do you think I was wrong for exposing her? Was I wrong for letting the situation escalate? Was I wrong for letting the truth come out? I want you to tell me honestly, because sometimes, even when you do the right thing, it still feels wrong. But maybe that's what healing looks like. Maybe it's messy. Maybe it's painful. Maybe it breaks things before it fixes anything. If you were on my side through this entire mess, make sure you like this video. If you want more true, dramatic, unbelievable stories like this, hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to drop your final thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you would have done, whose side you're on, and whether you think justice was served. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.